Question is the House do now adjourn, and I call the member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We all want to make Australia make again. We want manufacturing back. One thing that COVID has identified is that we are vulnerable as a nation because we've lost our industrial base and our manufacturing sector is a shadow of its former self. We've developed smarter niche manufacturing, but that doesn't keep an economy going when you're isolated in crises such as what's happened in COVID. Why did so much of our manufacturing go overseas? Why did our numbers in 1990 amount to 1.17 million in manufacturing jobs as opposed to 855,000 manufacturing jobs in 2020? The answer, Mr Speaker, has got a lot to do with the cost of electricity, because we have a high-wage economy in Australia, which everyone loves. It gives us a good standard of living, but we have given away our competitive advantage in reliable, cheap electricity, which was some of the cheapest in the world, and it's now the most expensive. And manufacturing, whether it's processing raw materials, metals, food, fibres, into semi-processed or extensive processing and manufacturing, you need bundles of energy. Manufacturing without cheap electricity is like an irrigation farm without cheap water. If you have expensive water, you can't afford to make money out of growing crops. The same in manufacturing. You can't make money unless your electricity cost, which is your greatest cost usually, is reasonable. Now, why have our costs gone up in electricity? Because of many reasons, but we have destroyed our competitive advantage. In the rush to get a decarbonised economy, we have put regulations in the energy markets favouring renewables. We've had regulatory subsidies in the form of renewable energy targets, which have generated the existence of renewable energy certificates. We have, as we know, gold-plated some of the poles and wires with some of the state regulations. There's a guaranteed return on gold plating and putting in expensive grid infrastructure. But the main reason we have got expensive electricity is that the so-called cheap renewably generated electricity is only available between 20 and 30% of the time, and that is destroying the efficiency of the baseload system. We have in New South Wales some of the best coal in the world in terms of energy density. The only thing that's better than that is uranium, which is very energy dense, but that's banned using that for electricity in Australia. So we rely on coal. But our power stations are very old. In New South Wales, they are all subcritical power stations, 1970s and even 60s technology that are using up their design life. There are some ultra-supercritical ones in Queensland, and many countries in Asia are switching using our black energy dense coal to produce cheap electricity. You know, our black coal in the Hunter Valley, which I visited on the weekend, compared to Indonesian coal, is 30% less CO2 producing. Compared to Indian coal, it's 70% less. That's an amazing difference. By India burning our black coal, they're reducing their carbon footprint by 70%. Indonesia is reducing their footprint by 30%, but we're exporting our greatest competitive advantage. It's our biggest earner at the moment, along with iron ore. But what I'm saying, Mr Speaker, is we could get both. We could get the environmental outcome that we're all seeking if we utilised our black energy dense coal in ultra-supercritical, highly efficient, low emissions power stations, which need to be built for us to meet our targets. If we did that and we built them in Victoria, you'd get a 43% reduction, because they use brown coal, which is a lot moister and has a lot more CO2 and things like that in it. But if we built modern power stations, we get a 43% reduction. Now, if you put carbon capture and storage, you could reduce it by 90%, but we would be getting cheap energy round the clock. Now, on the weekend, we've had a heat wave. In New South Wales, 80% of the energy during that heat wave came from these 4 old power stations. If we don't replace them, the lights will go out. It's also a case that in the morning, in the night, the lights won't go on.
The member's time has concluded.